What has happened, people? We are back at it. A bit of a recap from yesterday. I took a GU buy. I took fall at 1 to 3 and a bit. This is exactly what I called in the pre-market. But looking back at it, I probably should have taken partials at 1 to 3-ish. And then really targeted that 1 to 10 area, which is the area I was targeting yesterday. So good thing to journal there. I'm not mad. I still secured 3.5%, but did leave a lot on the table, which is a bit of a problem. As you can see on the 4 hour, that's exactly what I wanted to have happen, like to the T. And I probably should have caught most of that move. So that's all right. On to the next. In terms of what I'm expecting coming into today, is just to continue to buy. EU, for example, makes sense to come and take this high. 4 hourly and daily, we've kind of completed more or less our structure cycles of what we're expecting. We're at the extreme of the range, taking the decisional. Realistically, with EU specifically, I just want to replicate this move. Now, understanding that this may not be the case, we've got lots of imbalance and stuff to fill, and on the weekly, we are at a point of really extreme. So it's either we're going to repeat that move or we're going to repeat this leg here, which is more likely possible, especially given the current world kind of scenario. So we've got that there, or what we'll do is we'll repeat this. Okay, and they're the kind of two options I'm seeing. So we're either going to get that or we're going to get that. Okay, I think it's that simple. So we're at that area, I guess, of 50-50-ness with the range. But I'm happy to actually buy up to this more break and retest area we've got here. So if we jump down in the 15 minute and we kind of look at what we want to look for come today, let's remove that so we can't see it. We are in the extreme of this range. This range here, high to low. This is retest of the 4 hour, but given the divergence with GU, we could actually sell from here. So now we've come in and we've taken this internal point. Given what GU's done, it's actually possible we get this. So that's our current range, high to low. This did take liquidity. It did push down. It did create the structure cycle. We then pushed through the decisional, which was this point here. This has then created that supply to demand here. That's kind of the next area we can come down. Yes, we've got more or less like an internal break and retest of this range, which is kind of the internal break, but we've completed the structure cycle to the upside. In terms of where we've come into, we are still in this little area here. I would imagine there's a little point somewhere on the 5 minute we've come into in here, but it's more or less really filled. So it's either what I'm looking for is this point to be a smart money trap and to trade down to this, at least down into this area, and then come and take this. Or what I'm looking for is this to be a trap and we get something that pulls us through there. So there's two options. We're at that indecision area. I'm going to follow this bearish move until it tells me that it's not the case. But where we're coming from, the liquidity we've taken, it makes more sense to actually push up. So today will be a very hard day to read. And we'll kind of have to play that by ear. If you read internally, like I said, we've got this break here. That was the decisional of the break. We've then taken the decisional. We've induced into the mitigation of that high. It now makes sense to sell to the point where if it gave you something like this, you could sell pre-market, but it looks like it's going to kind of like flush through with that. It didn't really create a structure cycle to the upside in terms of that internal break. So it more makes sense to sell down to this area. So sells today on EU are kind of a go. And it looks like it's going to take off early. GU, we've now induced that 4 hour retest. That's exactly what I wanted to see yesterday. We've induced that 4 hour retest. And now we're kind of due for that sell. We've taken the previous day high, obviously early in Asia. We've then pulled down and created a bit of structure. GU, there's not much we can do. I would like to sell, but it's just screaming buyers. We've got break of structure, supply to demand area here with no more or less liquidity into it. I would like to sell. It's just giving nothing. So EU is definitely the main focus, and I will be staying away from GU today. I'm not really seeing much we can do. We have induced here, pulled down, and then induced high. On the 5 minute, we've got no ranges. GU screaming buys, at least until we get to the area. If we look at the 4 hour and our current internal ranges, we've got high to low with a retest, decisional of this break, which we've more or less come into now. It probably just wants to fill this gap and kind of come into this hourly point that sits here, which took the last bit of liquidity and is more or less that decisional. So this gives us a medium inducement into decisional. Makes sense to kind of come up to that point, but given what EU's doing, it could be unlikely. So GU's kind of off limits until we get to this area, and then I'll keep an eye on it and kind of watch it and see what it wants to do. But just understanding GU's just taken a major inducement. It's in that decisional. It's in the daily area. We can push higher from here. We've got lots of liquidity here, like lots of liquidity. We can just come and take that and start a new leg, like I said. If we kind of look on the daily on a higher time frame, we just haven't quite come into the top of this area yet, which we can definitely come into. Take liquidity. It's in this area of decisional. It's taken that retest here, but we can feel a little bit higher. So we'll see what GU does. Like I said, I'm open to both sides of the market, but at the moment, sells are kind of the only go here because we're so bullish. But we'll obviously have to see what happens here. See what this does as well. It's now taken and broken, given absolutely no structure, break and retest into decisional, which is more or less a supply to demand. If we can get a smart money trap here, buy through that, continue on EU and GU, continue buying. So it's at that 50-50 point here and 50-50 point here. So we need to see what this does internally. GU is kind of off limits heading to that point. AU, we've just pushed all the way up. AU actually had a really good buy. I wish I'd taken AU over GU. This is exactly what I called on AU yesterday. Really, really good inducement. Really clean A+ entry. It was actually a better entry than what GU provided. I just took GU instead of AU, but I wish I had taken this because the nearest take profit was 1 to 7. So I would have been able to pull a lot more out of this. Now we've kind of come down. If we read the hourly, we've got internal break. That's the decisional, which we've kind of come into now with this internal break and retest and failure to make a new lower low. Now we've come into this area. We can kind of see what this does off of that. This entire more or less move here is an area of validity. Now we've taken that internal decisional and come into more or less the extreme. There's no space at all on top of this. So I would call this the extreme of this leg. Here, pull up, and I would have this as my extreme, which we've kind of come into now. So we are in an area where we can sell. We've had a medium inducement off of that into the mitigation of this point right here. So open to sell. We just need to create more liquidity. So I'll need a minor inducement. Ideally something better than that. That's not really enough to go off of. So what I'll need is realistically something like that, and then I'm happy to take that move, targeting that liquidity. I need it to build up. This just isn't enough personally. If we kind of read into this point as well, we have taken liquidity at the top. This could be break and retest internally. No, that's pretty clean. I don't actually mind using that area here, which we've just tapped into. So give us a minor inducement now, and I'm quite happy to sell. We need some liquidity to target, and I'm quite happy to come and target this really just dribble range. There's not really any points to work off of. We had low, high, low, high, so really, really good range here. Supply to demand, obviously, which mitigated the extreme of that area. The decisional itself, more or less, it's kind of this point here with a huge imbalance. So like I said, we'll be looking for that sell down to this area here and then see what it does. Possibly even take that move there. That'll be a really, really nice entry, and that may actually be New York. So this will be a lot harder to take. If it does come down to this point and use it as a smart money trap, this will be such a clean entry down to this point. That'll be really nice, but we can push higher, we can break higher. We'll just have to see how we kind of go off of that. Now the DXY has now come and taken that point, so this should buy up, which means I think everything else should sell. Our entire 4-hour outlook is played out, which was the thing I just deleted. We can remove that. I believe it's that point. Yep. entire 4-hour outlook's played out. I'm expecting this to kind of push up now and go from there. So I'll be live with the group in 30 minutes. So if you guys are in the premium, I'll see you on the live. Other than that, let's have a good Tuesday. I'm up 3% for the week, 3.5%, 9% for the month, yet to take a loss. So we'll see if we can kind of keep that streak going. And I'll keep you guys updated. So let's have a good session. Any questions, drop them below. Premium links down below as well. Free links down below. And let's have a good Tuesday.